What's going on, everybody? It's Frito here for Your Overwatch. Can you believe it? BlizzConline is tomorrow. Cross your fingers and hope for something good. We've got leaks to discuss, though, that may illuminate what we're going to get. But first, quick update. The experimental patch went through to the live game with one major change. This Reaper damage fall-off rework got toned down yet again, where the pellet damage on the experimental card was 6 per shot. Now it goes down one more half step to 5.5 per pellet, I should say. This means that a full blast from Reaper's shotgun will do 110 inside of its effective range, keeping in mind that, according to the wiki anyway, Reaper shoots 2 shots per second, which is fairly typical for a lot of DPS characters. So that means you will need 2 full body shots to take down a squishy without barely missing any pellets, mind you, within its effective range. And as well, if you're trying to burst kill through healing, you'll absolutely need headshots at close range in order to do so. A very typical value for me is a mercy beam, which very quickly applies to a target to save something from the likes of a character like Reaper rolling up on them. Now, I'm glad that they tuned this back a bit, because as Lot on Reddit illustrated, in most ranges, this damage rework ended up being a buff. Yes, and keep in mind, the new value will be slightly lower on this graph of DPS. You can just take it a half step down, but it really does take this type of distance testing in order to see how the actual range fall off works. So the close range definitely will be lower than this graph implies, but you may still see a range damage benefit at the medium ranges, just due to the spread reduction in the buff. I would assume that the fall off curve would look like this, just lower on the chart, which would mean at like the 8 to 10 meter range, the new range won't be as severely different than the old one, though you are going to begin to see range gains at much further ranges than you're expecting. But the thing I want to emphasize is that this damage fall-off test was done just at a full-size hitbox, which is like the backside of a Roadhog. The important thing to remember with the Reaper spread reduction is that you'll now be able to confidently hit smaller targets more accurately. Your effective damage on certain hitbox types is definitely going to go up, even if the damage isn't as severe as it was originally in the experimental card. So playing up against Reaper, I would say a character like Zenyatta, for example, which has that like perfectly square-shaped medium range hitbox that Tracer typically farms, Reaper as well at medium range will feel like a much bigger threat to you. But conversely, with a lot of these reworks, now with Winston having more armor, as well as the buffs previously to D.Va and Reinhardt before them, Reaper's shotgun damage at extreme close range is nowhere near as threatening if you have some of that armor health. And as they're stacking on more and more to the likes of Winston, you're not going to have to be deathly afraid of really any shotgun, but Reaper especially. It's really important to note the damage we're talking about. Roadhog does 150 damage per shot. Reaper does 110 now. Reaper has more ammo, shoots faster, etc. But in the same way that a tank can kind of shrug off Roadhog hooking them in if they have armor health, you're going to feel the same level of leniency up against a Reaper now. And even more so, I would say Orisa is going to feel like she's going to hard counter Reaper, because she also benefits from the damage numbers going down and having armor health. But on top of that, the buff to Fortify means that she can stand tall in lots of duels that she used to be terrified of. Characters that have a big percentage of their damage type being stowed away in headshots are now going to be deathly afraid of Orisa when she has Fortify active. So I'm thinking characters like Widowmaker, Hanzo, Soldier, Reaper, those characters that aren't too difficult for Orisa to line up and lay into, but used to lose the duel head up due to how easily they would look towards her giant head hitbox and farm it. Especially when you think of Widowmaker's ranged nerfs, Orisa is going to be doing more effective range to the 175 health Widowmaker at long range than the Widow can do back, it might feel like. I mean, especially when Fortify's up, at least, right? But I also think Orisa gets a very big buff indirectly with Wrecking Ball going down. Wrecking Ball's knockback being nerfed by 25% means that his displacement on a bunker style setup or Death Ball, or any comp that he's good fighting against, really, can much more easily shrug off his displacement. Orisa in particular comes to mind because now Hammond can't headshot her when she has Fortify, Wrecking Ball has less shield health after the previous nerfs, and won't be able to, say, knock her off the map or even just outside of her projected barrier as easily as before. I think that's a very significant distance to nerf the Wrecking Ball Grappling Claw Fireball. Somehow I made it through that sentence, because I think it's the difference between Orisa feeling she has to use Fortify every time when the ball rolls through as to not just fully die when getting booped, versus having a bit of leniency to use Fortify a bit more towards dueling rather than, oh my god, I'm getting displaced away from my team and I'm going to die. I think that is a huge difference, right? And it's like compounding buffs into Orisa's favor. But as far as bigger meta considerations, it seems to make sense that very strong top meta comp, Winston Zarya, which when executed well has very strong matchups against the likes of Orisa, might be the big winner in all of this. It was already playable in the previous version if you executed it basically perfectly and didn't make the mistakes that most ranked players make. And it's important to note that the damage types of Winston and Zarya is either beam or projectile, which doesn't headshot anyway. So you're not going to feel a big advantage with the new Orisa playing against them. It's going to interact basically the same. For the rank context, though, I think the biggest winner in the mix-up likely is Reinhardt-based comps, because the two characters that I thought really kept that comp in check was the strength of Wrecking Ball fighting your team or Roadhog playing around you. That's another matchup where potentially swapping to Orisa may be surprisingly strong against Hog, where I think we traditionally assumed Hog kind of just farms her, especially with Whole Hog. Now that you can't headshot, well, don't underestimate how much damage Fusion Driver will put out against a big, easy to hit head hitbox when you can't get headshot yourself. The gaps in damage in those duels is going to be pretty severe when you're using it. So I think Hog actually loses a bit, maybe not in strength, but in wide applicability. So we'll be monitoring how this patch evolves over time and have more content covering Overwatch as it evolves. So be sure to hit the bell icon to get notified directly to your cell phone when our future videos come out. Don't miss out on the upcoming uploads. Next subject for the news video, though, is there has been some alleged BlizzCon online leaks, or one, namely. This tweet has been making the rounds, claiming to have the list of announcements for BlizzCon Online, and you'll see some pretty interesting announcements for Blizzard as a whole. A remastered Diablo 2, which has been floating around, a World of Warcraft pet battle mobile game, a new class and area reveal for Diablo 4, which is interesting. If you've paid close attention to the schedule for BlizzCon, it looks like every other game is getting a Q&A, but Overwatch, making it seem like Diablo 4 is farther along in development than even Overwatch 2, a bit concerning. But the leaker says that Overwatch will be getting new heroes, maps, and a lore sneak peek for Overwatch 2. This is very important, and Blizzard didn't even hide this in saying that the 40-minute presentation for Overwatch is the sequel, a sneak peek into the development of it. Which is to say, we're not really getting much. And according to this leak, there is actually nothing for Overwatch 1. Whenever it comes to Overwatch leaks, we always want to know what Metro knows, because he's the one who has the most reliable Overwatch leaks in the history of the game. Metro said this week to lower your expectations, also confirming a Diablo 2 remaster and some generalized progress on Overwatch 2, how it's going, what to expect. I'm sure that'll be great, but he puts it in no uncertain terms in saying Overwatch 1 is dead in terms of having more content added, and we can just silence our dreams for that, which makes me very sad. Metro goes on to say new heroes for Overwatch 2 might be presented. From what I heard, is very unlikely we will get a new Overwatch 1 hero at this point. And Metro, like everybody else, says free-to-play is in the works, but it probably won't happen at BlizzCon. Who knows? Maybe we get a Christmas miracle in February, but he's not sold that the game is going to go free-to-play before Overwatch 2, and that seems to be the majority consensus opinion. I, on the other hand, thought it was crazy that Activision would announce in the shareholder meeting that they're going to take the Call of Duty model and apply it to all of their franchises, which the most obvious one to apply that to would be Overwatch. But most seem to think that the game will go free to play when Overwatch 2 comes out with a separate standalone premium product PvE type game, and then Overwatch 1.0 as we know it, with extra add-ons and stuff, that will go free to play at that time with a new monetization model. My question is, if you announce this to your shareholders and news outlets begin spreading this, that Overwatch 1 will eventually go free to play, why would anyone buy Overwatch 1 at this point? If we all seem to know they're going to make that play, whether it be through leaks or just common sense, that it seems like they have to do it. Now, I agree. Now, in previous videos, I've espoused the virtues of free-to-play, and I know a lot of you really want to make sure that it's heard that there are negatives, potentially, to free-to-play. More alt accounts, hackers, are the first problem that is on the tip of everyone's tongue. I would say, well, on console, where a lot of players play, there already is an alt account problem. I agree, that's definitely a concern, but it's already a problem anyway that needs fixing, right? I feel it's already the case. If you want an alt account, you can easily get one. It isn't so much a barrier to entry to alt accounts, but a barrier to entry for those who wouldn't have bought the game anyway when it goes free to play ultimately. But also, having talked with a lot of you guys on your concerns about free to play, one major one is that we, as the dedicated players that bought the game, and perhaps even multiple times on different platforms, don't want the floodgates opened up for anyone to get the same stuff that we have, and it feels like a slight to us to have paid for the game and then it go free to play, especially if you just bought it a week ago or something, right? But I feel like that's gonna happen anyway, and you just have to rip the band-aid off at some point. Not to mention, I almost assume that along with free-to-play would have to come some new content. I suppose the easiest way to sell the old community on free-to-play is when Overwatch 2 comes out. That will be the least painful way to do it. But I just want to point out that this process isn't without pain at some point, right? If Metro is right, and we get basically 0 for Overwatch 1, for what, an entire year? Would you prefer that? Or would we prefer to switch over the monetization model to free-to-play, have new players come in, and also add stuff to the game, which is my assumption that would have to come with it, right? Once they do that, they have to add something. I don't know, it's all really disappointing, right? And it looks really bleak right now. And I think there's a bit of a conflict going on, and has been for quite some time with Overwatch, to be honest, between Activision and Blizzard and the desires of the esport versus the desires of the devs, and it's kind of gets pulled in different directions. And on one hand, I commend the devs by standing by their principles and trying to make a quality product before rushing it out. Obviously, I want that. But on the other hand, I've bought a lot of loot boxes in my day. I've supported this game. I'll buy whatever outrageous skin they put out. I've got them all. And really, I just want excuses to keep playing the game, right? I just want more things to do. And it doesn't feel good to me to hold back the content I know they've either had or have been working on or whatever for this long off date in the future where they can package it all together, when it sort of feels like if they wanted to, they could be back on the old development cycle for the game. But instead, they're holding it back for Overwatch 2. That feels bad too, right? Like, there's a lot of ways that this feels bad, but ultimately I want what's best for the fans of the game to get the most out of the product, which is why I really hope that we get some sort of half measure at BlizzCon tomorrow that indicates to the fans we're still with you and making stuff. But at the same time, Metro's never wrong, so if he says just abandon all hope, ye who enter here, I mean, I kind of have to take his side, despite my optimism towards Activision wanting to inject some short-term life back into the game. But maybe they just don't really have any interest in doing that, and hope that Overwatch 2 just reaches such another huge, massive high that they can afford to package everything they're working on to that later launch date. I guess really the only thing I don't understand is why nearly blatantly announce that Overwatch will be going to free-to-play eventually, and then not do it soon thereafter. Waiting a whole year, yeah, it might make the long-term fans feel better about their purchases, but aside from that, I think really what we want is more content for our purchases, right? Like, do we want to just have a smaller community among paying customers longer with less content? Like, I don't think you actually want that. To some degree, us as a community, we kind of have to accept the lesser of two evils. There are downsides to free to play, yes, but I'm trying to meet them halfway because I'm pretty sure almost any active player doesn't really find it too cool that they just decided that they'd stop developing for the game, or at least substantially reduce the amount of content they added to Overwatch 1. It's a bit unfair to say they haven't been working on it because they actually have put some of their best work of the entire game in the past year or two, right? It wasn't that long ago that roll queue came out, and now I think the priority pass system has buffed it even more, and to that degree, I think quick play in Overwatch is in an amazing state, and any concerns I have about the high level balance and the competitive format and ranked and all of that kind of washes away when you get into the perspective of an average monthly user that likely just plays quick play. So the game's not in as bad of a spot as diehard fans like myself tend to think. So maybe it is okay that they wait until Overwatch 2, but for us competitively minded players that want to play ranked and want kind of that extra experience from the game and want Overwatch League to be good, or at least top level streamers to be enjoying themselves and not leaving for other games, like, it's all really concerning if they don't at least throw those folks a bone. But I guess we'll have to find out what they prioritize and what they find important to do. Tomorrow, I would expect that the opening ceremony is going to have the Overwatch 1.0 news, if there is any. The sneak peek for Overwatch 2 seems fairly self-explanatory. New stuff for that game that we're not going to get for X amount of time. Fine. I'm most excited to know if they're going to do anything with Overwatch 1. So come on, Jeff, give me something. Well, guys, that's everything for today's video. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Are we getting bad, good, or great news from BlizzCon tomorrow? Explain yourself in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this video, be sure to leave it a like. It really does help us out and lets us know that you're enjoying the content. And if you haven't already, hit subscribe and sure to hit the bell icon to actually get notified when our videos go live. Link to the description is our Twitter, where we tweet out news, updates, polls that I use to help gain your guys' perspective for discussing in this video that you can hit follow and contribute to as well. That's been it for me. I've been Frito for your Overwatch. We'll see you guys next time.